December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy.
It was, I believe, a Sunday afternoon, and we decided to get into a car and drive over for a short visit. So with the radio on in the car, the news came over that Pearl Harbor was attacked. So that's where I was when it was announced. I really can't give you a specific reason. That I guess I just made up my mind. I don't want to go in the Army. I'm gonna pick the Marine Corps.
Did you know that the Marines? I mean, that's talk about putting yourselves in harm's way. They're certainly the reputation of the Marines was frontline guys.
Yeah, I was aware of that. Yes, very much so. The other big surprise is when we did get to the Parris Island, South Carolina area, you in the railroad terminal, naturally you exit the railroad car and walk into the railroad terminal. Well, what hit me by major surprise is that there was signs, restrooms, and waiting areas. And the thing that really hit me and set me back is the sign says colored only, and the other sign says white only. Mm-hmm. And I said to myself, you know, what are these black people? What do they do to deserve this? You know, and that really impacted me. That's the first time I was exposed to something like that. We ended up, that ship ride was from San Diego, California to the Solomon Islands in the southern Pacific.
Do training at Guadalcanal between October and January before you're shipped off?
Of 1945, that we landed on Okinawa. It was peculiar because it was a Easter Sunday morning, and we hit the island early that morning, and the big surprise was there was no resistance whatsoever. We had no resistance from enemy fire coming onto the beach, which was obviously very rare.
Was that kind of tough? I mean, in one sense, you land, there's no resistance, you're just kind of day by day waiting for something to happen, and that kind of
exactly. We finally found the resistance area, and it was very well fortified. And the infantry had resistance to severe resistance from one particular area. So they called in this artillery support, not from artillery guns, but from battleship 16-inch naval guns that were assigned to wipe out the enemy resistance. We witnessed it. Of course, you could hear the projectiles coming over your head and then hitting and exploding. And when they exploded, you could see trees flying in the air. The impacts were such. But anyway, then they achieved apparently the Navy achieved the support that was asked of them. The terrain was kind of leveled, so it made the visibility much better for our people to advance. So I was called on to take this bulldozer and go down there, clean out where they're asking us to open up whatever road. It wasn't really roads. It was just open up something there that's they want open for their vehicles to pass. So that was my assignment, not knowing what I'm going to encounter going forward. Well, I encountered resistance that I didn't expect, and I was apparently in somebody's gun sights that let a burst of machine gun fire come, and I swear them bullets were 3 inches from my ears or 12 inches from my ears, but I could hear them snap, snap, snap. I said, man, they got me numbered. So I immediately got off the machine and crawled back to where we were kind of behind, waiting for the infantry to move up. And I had told my lieutenant, I said, look, I'm not going to sit up as a clay pigeon looking for automatic weapon fire. So he said, well, you did the right thing. Somebody had a beat on me, and I never thought I'd get back out of there. But fortunately, they missed me, and I crawled all the way back to our people. And so moving behind the infantry into new territory, we happened to be walking across a rice paddy plantation, or it was rice paddies. We had boots that we could use if we encountered mud, and that's what it really was. So with boots on, we walked through the paddy or the marsh, what do you want to call it. I wasn't familiar with rice paddies at that time. Into that rice paddy area, there come a barrage of mortar shells. And unfortunately, one of them landed and exploded maybe three feet away from me, and knocked me down. I couldn't walk anymore. So I laid there quite a while, and the barrage kind of stopped. We didn't hear any more bursts of mortar shells. So we had in the Marine Corps, we had with us always a Navy corpsman, they called. He was like our medical assistant, and somehow they zeroed him on. Somehow they got a hold of him and sent him over to me, and I remember him cutting off my boot. I was still conscious. I didn't know. My injury was all in my legs from this burst of mortar shell, and what saved probably what saved my life is the fact that the shell buried itself into the marsh because it was muddy. And when the explosion occurred, the mud restricted the amount of shrapnel that was thrown out. And I kind of say that had it not buried itself and exploded near the surface where it was intended to explode, I don't know where I would be. But anyway, getting back to this Navy corpsman, he did arrive, and I said he's cutting off my boots, and I remember the emphasis from then the other not a peculiar, but the other surprise is the lieutenant of my group was one of the first ones over, and he says, "Where are you hit?" I said, "Oh, my legs. I can't walk. I can't bend my knee." So where they got a stretcher, somehow somehow a stretcher appeared, and my lieutenant and 3 other guys, which I can't identify yet. I don't remember who they were. But they carried me back into what they considered a safer area. And the next thing I knew, I was to an emergency naval hospital on the island of Guam. And then they said the next flight's going to Honolulu. You're going to be aboard one of them planes for further medical treatment. So I did get to Honolulu, to a naval hospital there, which was very good, very first-class facility. Through x-rays, they had found that I had shrapnel embedded right in my knee joint. So surgery was required. And the surgeons at the Naval Hospital in Honolulu achieved that. They removed the shrapnel. So from that point on, I was on crutches for a good many weeks. The time come that the war was over, and I was ready for discharge. So in January of 1946, I did get a discharge, and that was the end of my tour of duty with the Marine Corps. I forgot to interject in the kamikaze attacks that we had witnessed by vision. You know, the naval ships were like maybe a mile away offshore, naturally. And, just before sunset, these Japanese planes would come in and hit our, they were loaded with bombs naturally, and committing suicide, they would plunge right into the ships that were out there. They did an awful lot of damage, but the anti-aircraft fire, like this is most generally these 20mm automatic guns that try to knock down the plane before it hits you, before it achieves its mission. We being on shore, some of them, the shrapnel that come out of some of that anti-aircraft gunfire, it was coming down like rain from the sky.
Oh, wow.
So naturally, we had to put helmets on, which you had a helmet with you all the time. But the amount of damage we saw done visually by them Japanese people, it was sickening. I remember one individual I got friendly with, a big tall guy somewhere out of Pennsylvania, and he was I was never much of a card player, poker player, or whatever. Anyway, these group of guys would always they called them the poker club. Well, this one tall guy that I got kind of friendly with from Pennsylvania, he said, look, they took me for a couple of bucks last night. He said, how about loaning me a $10, $20? So I said, I'm drying up. I loaned you how many? I loaned you a lot of. I said, look, I loaned you as much as they loan you. So that's all I got in my pocket. I'll pay you back. So as time went on, I run into him a month or two later somewhere else, and I still owe it to you. And then he went his way, I went mine. We went to do different camps or whatever. I lost track of them. Needless to say, they were glad to see me, especially my mother. I never knew a lady could hug hug me as strong as she did, but I do recall that.